So I'm going to be reacting to a TikTok video from a creator that I've seen put out some questionable content. When it comes to some of the technical pieces, I certainly can't speak to some of his domain expertise, so I'm not going to be touching on that. But some of the management and leadership philosophy pieces I've historically just really not agreed with. So we're going to be checking out this video together. I'm going to be reacting to it and then giving you my sort of summary. I have, to be totally transparent, I've only gone through a couple of parts of this video. I've certainly not watched the whole thing the whole way through, so you will be getting a bit of genuine reaction from me. So yeah, let's jump over to it. So before I press play here, I just want to say that I mean nothing personal against this person. I just want to talk about the topics that we see in here, and that means if I agree with it, great. If I don't, I'm just giving you my opinion. It's nothing personal to this creator, so let's have a look.
Leaders in HR departments almost seem to stack the deck against you, so here's what you can do about it.
Okay, quick pause. Yeah, that seems a little interesting. I have to see more what he has to say, but it kind of seems like the framing of this already is looking like, you're put on your own, like your management and HR is not there for you. I hope that's not the message here. If it is, I would just tell people, please find somewhere else to work. That's not a good spot to be. Let's see what he has to say.
Most companies have role guidelines that give specific thresholds that you need to hit in order to be considered performing at or above your current level. However, what's really crazy about that whole thing is it's rarely shared with employees. This means
Okay, that's interesting. First of all, I say yes to the first part. Something like a rubric, a talent guide, a career guide, something that helps sort of share expectations with employees, between employees and managers. So ICs, individual contributors and managers, or managers and managers, having something like a talent guide or a rubric, I think is incredibly important. One of the biggest things is like, having clear expectations between an employee and a manager. So something like a talent guide in this case, I think is critical. If you're working at a place that doesn't have this, I would say like at startups and stuff especially, it's actually pretty common you don't really have this because the business itself is seemingly just so focused on trying to move forward to get the business going. I would say don't worry too much if you're at something like a startup, but definitely keep your eye on it. And I would say that it's something that you should try to encourage to have because as you're growing your career, yes, something like a startup, you're going to have these other experiences and stuff that are really valuable. But when it comes to career progression in general, you don't want to be in a situation where you're unsure, asking questions just to even understand, like, are you doing the right things to be considered? So I think that's really important. His second point here, I think, is really interesting that it's often not shared with employees. Not in my not in my experience, and I say that because as a manager, at the places I've worked, or and even as an employee, it was like I always had this stuff shared with me. As a manager, I use these talent guides and rubrics, whatever you'd like to call them. I literally use them in conversations and one-on-ones and like performance review time. So let's go ahead and see what he has to say.
means that when people are going into their annual reviews, they think that they're doing a great job, but the employer or the manager seems to think differently. Same thing happens when it comes to promotions. People are promised a promotion or made to believe that they're going to get promoted, but they're not necessarily performing what's needed at the role at the next level.
Yeah, so exactly that. His premise so far is that that stuff's not shared with employees. Again, if that's where you're working, then I would say like try to do something about having that change. Try to influence having that changed. Because of exactly this reason. I totally agree. Surprisingly, I totally agree with this gentleman on this point. It's I think the number one reason why you need this kind of stuff. The I feel like as a manager, I would be failing my employees if it came to performance review time and we had a conversation and I shared with them kind of like, here's your rewards, your compensation changes, all that kind of stuff. If they're surprised, and I say surprised, even if they're surprised that they're getting promoted versus not getting a promotion or the rewards maybe aren't where they expect, having surprises at that point in time tells me as a manager that I didn't do everything I could to be transparent about their progress. Now, yes, some people will be happy that they're getting promoted, but I would hope that at that point they're like, I feel deserving of this. It might feel surprising, like in the moment that it's happening, but they should feel like I've worked and deserved this. And the conversations we've been having between me and the IC, indicate that that's the case. So let's keep going.
I find this to be completely ridiculous, and that lack of transparency isn't helping anyone out in the process. So, what you want to do is make sure that you're having those weekly one on ones with your manager and those monthly career development meetings that I talk about. And during those meetings, you need to make sure that you're getting the information on what success looks like at your level and what success looks like at the next level. With those
Okay, yeah, 100%. I'm shocked actually that I that I'm totally agreeing with this guy. That's spot on. I 100% agree with that. I like leaving one-on-ones open for my team to be able to talk about whatever they'd like to talk about. For some folks, that kind of turns into status updates on the projects they're doing and things like that, and that's okay. Because not I find like it almost feels forced if every week we meet and it's like, how am I doing in my career? How am I doing in my career? It feels a little forced, but I like leaving it open and giving, like, I've had people kind of say in their one-on-ones like, hey, like, I'm kind of curious, like, am I doing the right things? We talked about maybe this project opportunity that hasn't really happened, like, is that affecting me? um, so that's good. There's some people though that I've managed that sort of never lean into that, and I need to make space on purpose, like purposefully make space for them to be able to kind of bring that up in those conversations. So yeah, I totally agree with everything this guy's saying about this part.
thresholds and those guidelines in front of you, now you can start matching up where you need to be performing versus how you are performing, and you can create a plan to get to that level that you're trying to get to. This is something that I encourage all of my team members and my clients to do because your manager is probably not going to offer up that information on their own, and it's absolutely necessary in order for you to succeed and grow in your career.
Interesting. Oh, I guess we're at the end of the video. So yeah, I mean, to summarize that last part for sure, those conversations that you have in your one-on-one, leveraging talent guides, career guides, and just being able to talk about your career progression, your growth opportunities, your challenges, and not just status updates on projects and stuff. It's a huge opportunity for you to align as an individual contributor, or if you're a manager watching this, if you're a manager, aligning to your manager's expectations. Um, if you're doing weekly, bi-weekly, every 3 weeks, whatever the cadence is, you want to take those opportunities to synchronize on expectations. I do a podcast called Dude, Where's My Code with a good friend and former colleague of mine, both engineering managers, and it's interesting. Almost every single episode we do, it comes back to at some point level setting expectations, trust, that kind of stuff. But like fundamentally, I think that level setting expectations around your career is something that I expect other managers to do if they're being good managers, but I also expect you as an individual contributor or manager to be bringing that up with your manager as well. It needs to work both ways. Um, as this creator was saying, I think he takes the stance more that like you're often on your own, like you gotta fend for yourself. Um, if that's the case where he's worked, then I'm sorry, right? I think that that's a bad experience for employees, and I can't speak to where he's worked. I've never worked with the guy. I don't know. Um, but that's like the bar I set for other managers is like that's an expectation. You need to be having those conversations with your employees because as a manager, you're managing people. If you're not doing that with your employees, you're not doing your job. Like that's it. So, um, yeah, the part that I guess like I personally disagree with him on is that this kind of stuff is held back from employees because I haven't had that experience and I don't have that sort of expectation that other managers are doing that. I do mentor like early in career folks outside of my teams, which is great, awesome opportunity. And because they're early in career, fresh out of college, university, whatever it happens to be, that conversation is usually something that comes up in like, I don't know, the first couple of months. It's really like you need to be having open, candid conversations with your manager. Some of them, yeah, I will admit, in some cases, like maybe their manager isn't bringing it up, but certainly by coaching these people on it, I've heard from them like months later when we're touching base on this kind of stuff, like, yes, once I brought it up to my manager that I was curious about, aligning expectations and that kind of stuff, then their manager's like, oh, like, cool, like, let me make sure I'm doing that. And in a lot of cases, people have told me their managers appreciated that. So yes, managers, we're not perfect. Like I said, I do have the expectation that managers do that for people. But like everyone, if you're managing people and you have projects and stuff, like we're human. Sometimes it feels like things maybe kind of fall behind. It would be unfortunate for people on the team if they're kind of being a little bit left behind on level setting expectations. Like that's a pretty bad experience. So I don't think that managers purposefully withhold that kind of stuff. Can it happen like because they're getting busy? Yes, that's really crappy. So disagree, and I also agree with him that yes, you should be taking responsibility to be level setting expectations of your managers. So yeah, there's a pretty short video. That's my reaction to it. Those are my thoughts. And to just quickly summarize, um, talent guides are important, rubrics, whatever you want to call them. They are important. You should be using them with your manager to level set expectations. You should be having these conversations regularly. You should not be in a position where you're constantly feeling surprised about promotions or not getting promoted. That's not a good spot to be in. And if you're a manager watching this, please take those things into mind because those are things that you can help influence and improve. So, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.